When I put together a collection of music for one of our CD recordings, I'm thinking about a lot of different things. Primarily, I want this to be a resource for music educators and for students all across the world to hear a professional band play this music and to have it be something that they can use as an example of the way some of these pieces can sound. I also want to make sure that we have a diversity of repertoire on our CD recordings. And one of the things I love to do is to introduce new music to our musical community, pieces that either you may not be as familiar with or composers that you don't know. A lot of these pieces are brand new and many of them are written for the Marine Band, which we're very proud of. But I think it's also important that we have music that's in our canon, music that is part of our core repertoire in the concert band and wind ensemble community, and so we always try to include some of those as well. This present recording, Arioso, has all of those things. We have 3 pieces of music that are being heard in their present form for the very first time on a recording, and we have 2 absolute staples of our concert band repertoire. The title Arioso comes from the theme of the recording, which is the voice or song. All of the pieces on this recording are connected by this concept of how the human voice, as the earliest instrument in human history, has shaped all of our music across the world, and especially our instrumental music as we play here in the United States Marine Band. Johann Sebastian Bach wrote the Prelude and Fugue in C minor for organ originally in 1723. And then 200 years later, Edward Elgar arranged this piece for symphony orchestra. And Elgar's approach was that he wanted the music to be alive in a kind of 20th century vernacular, as if Bach had the ability to write for a 20th century orchestra. And so it's colorful and it uses all of the colors of the orchestra in a way that I think would have been really unusual for Bach to do during his time. Captain Ryan Nowlin, our assistant director, thought that this piece would be an excellent piece to add to the concert band repertoire as well. And so he transcribed Elgar's interpretation of Bach's original Fantasia and Fugue, and with all of the same colors that are available to us in the concert band as well. This is such a beautiful work. It wasn't written specifically for voices, but almost all of Bach's music has a very vocal quality, and it feels as though it could be sung. And it really called out to me in fitting it with this theme of something that's organic and natural and very much influenced by the human voice. And so I thought this was a perfect way to open this particular recording. Gustav Holst wrote 4 pieces for winds originally, and he was one of the first major composers of the 20th century to write original music and serious music for the concert band, and we're so fortunate that he did. He really kind of set the band off on its evolution as a serious concert ensemble, and one that has continued for the last 150 years. He wrote 2 suites for band. The first suite is very famous, and the second suite is equally as famous. The interesting thing about the second suite is it is based on British folk songs. So there are 7 different folk songs that he would have been very, very familiar with that he weaved into this instrumental work. We in the band community know this piece backwards and forwards. It's so incredibly famous, but we don't necessarily know the words to all these folk songs. And so we wanted to share those in the liner notes of this recording. And I think when you realize that these are actual traditional folk songs that would have been sung with such great emotion and intent, it really informs the way we play it as instrumentalists. And this theme of the voice and of song is deeply embedded into this classic band work that we have all known and loved for so long now. Jonathan Leshnoff is a very successful composer living and working in Baltimore. He's written for so many major orchestras and major soloists throughout our country, and we are so very fortunate to have an ongoing close relationship with Jonathan and his music. When Jonathan wrote his Clarinet Concerto for Ricardo Morales and the Philadelphia Orchestra in 2016, I was so taken by this work and how beautiful and expressive it was, what a reflection it was on the artistry of its soloist, Ricardo, and how beautifully he plays as well. The whole theme of the concerto is based around this idea of breath and of the way that we speak and how breath animates music and animates words and spoken language. And that was the intent behind each and every note of this concerto, and that's very obvious when you hear Ricardo play this. Jonathan then transcribed the work for concert band, and we were part of that process of bands who asked him and commissioned him to do this. And it was just a natural inclusion to make sure that this was a part of this Arioso album. The theme of the concerto fits so beautifully with the rest of the music on this album, and I could not pass up an opportunity to work directly again with Jonathan and Ricardo. We were very lucky to collaborate with both Jonathan and Ricardo during the recording process, and it was one of those moments that was just very symbiotic to have the composer there as we were making this music real time, and with Ricardo, who's such a wonderful professional and incredible musician. And the give and take of that process was so satisfying to have the band realize this music and bring it to life, to have Ricardo bring it to life and have every take be a little bit different. And then to hear Jonathan's feedback about what was working and what he liked, and to also experience that process where sometimes things were a little bit different than what he originally intended when he first wrote down the piece, but that it turned out to be better and more alive and more organic. And I think that what you hear in this recording is the result of that three-way collaboration between myself and the composer and the soloist, and of course the musicians of the band. It's a very present and very organic take on this wonderful piece. Joseph Schwantner's And the Mountains Rising Nowhere is a piece in the wind ensemble repertoire that is like none other that came before it or has come after it. I remember when I first heard this piece when I was in college, I was blown away at the fact that this was a wind ensemble making these sounds. It was so original and so captivating. And I knew it was something that if I ever had the opportunity, I would love to conduct and ultimately perform and record ourselves. The piece is made up of not only conventional playing of instruments throughout the regular wind ensemble instrumentation, but Joseph Schwantner has brought in all kinds of sonic elements and techniques that are above and beyond what any wind ensemble would normally do in the bulk of our regular repertoire. There's an incredibly extensive percussion section using a lot of really creative percussion instruments to create a really unique soundscape back there. And then in addition to that, he often, as he does in a lot of his works, brings in other sonic elements through extended techniques for the musicians of the rest of the wind ensemble. We have musicians who are whistling and humming and singing wordless sounds throughout the piece at key moments, elements that he calls the celestial choir. And indeed, there is this otherworldly quality to the way that this piece comes together. And sometimes you don't know what is producing these sounds. Is it an instrument? Is it a voice? Is it some other unique technique? And I think that's the beauty of this piece, is not only the sophistication of the musical content, but the fact that this soundscape is so compelling and it just draws you into this amazing work. One of the terrific things about our 21st century technology is we're able to collaborate with artists from afar sometimes. So even though we didn't have Joseph Schwantner in studio with us while we were recording his landmark work, we were able to share takes and share our recordings with him through the internet and through different recordings that we had produced in order to get his feedback and ensure that what we were doing for this album was what he intended. And we really enjoyed that back and forth and that collaboration with him working on this landmark piece for wind ensemble. A few years ago, I approached James Stephenson with the idea of working together and having him write a piece for the President's Own United States Marine Band. I knew that I wanted this to be a substantial piece of music, a symphony if possible, something that we could add to the repertoire of the concert band and something that would not only reflect our artistic values and our identity, but also something that would resonate with the entire band community. And Jim did not fail to produce. He wrote his Symphony No. 2 for us to premiere at the Midwest Band and Orchestra Clinic in December of 2016 in Chicago. And I gave him carte blanche to put on this any kind of theme or inspiration that he felt would move him. And what he came back with was beautiful. He had had this experience of hearing people laughing and talking, not necessarily speaking, but just the idea of the human voice and how it influences our emotions and how it's just embedded into all of us as human beings and how it expresses our own emotions, whether it's through singing or speaking. And he let that be his guide in creating an inspirational piece, a piece that was inspired by this idea of how the voice impacts us emotionally. Most of the piece is instrumental, even though it's inspired by the voice, but you hear these emotions that he runs through, and the piece runs the gamut of emotions, from joy and happiness to anger to nervousness to, at the end, kind of transformation and deep, deep emotional content. Embedded within Jim's symphony is the sound of a mezzo-soprano, in our case, our own Sarah Sheffield. And he doesn't include any text with the voice. It's simply the voice itself, almost like another instrument within the band. But the way he uses the voice is brilliant, and it emerges at key emotional moments within the symphony and creates this soundscape, much like the Schwantner, that I think is unlike anything else in the modern concert band repertoire. We're very, very proud of this symphony. I was so delighted to be able to perform it and now to record it and include it on this album. And I'm confident that it's going to become a major addition to the symphonic band and wind ensemble repertoire in the years ahead. I hope this CD represents a diverse and wonderful collection of music, both new and old, in our concert band and wind ensemble repertoire. On behalf of the musicians of the President's Own United States Marine Band, I know we're very proud to share this with you, and I hope you enjoyed listening to it as much as we enjoyed making it.